For me, aging well is much more about living with intention, living with integrity. Are we leading with love? Are we living with joy? Those are the kinds of questions that I like to ask myself. And saying she looks good for her age, it's ageist. I mean, it's simply ageist. We don't have to say for her age at all. We don't say to a teenager that they look good for their age.
I'm your host, Kim Hines, and welcome to the Emotional Eats podcast. I'm on a mission to show you that what you consume, not just the food, affects your entire life. Midlife is different. Let's dig into the real reasons why you eat when you're not hungry and why you're not feeling well. My guests and I are going to give you doable solutions and help you let go of perfectionism, food rules, and stress to make changes that will last a lifetime. If you're ready to ditch old school diet culture and nourish your entire life, this is the show for you. How is culture and society affecting how you feel about yourself as you age? In episode 9, I'm so honored to talk with Skylar Liberty Rose. She's a pro-aging champion for women, and she's really focusing her efforts on helping women embrace aging. Skylar and I talk about what women in midlife are dealing with when it comes to aging, learning to be ourselves, and our limiting beliefs as our bodies age. We talk about the anti-aging industry and marketing to women over 40. Skylar shares ways we can disentangle ourselves from this cultural conditioning and our own conditioning. And we tackle those phrases like looking good for her age and anti-aging. We even have a short conversation about comments that are even made about celebrities like Martha Stewart, Courtney Cox, Madonna. Skylar gives us ways to feel authentically ourselves. There's absolutely no judgment around women who choose to deal with aging in their own way. It's all about us feeling comfortable in our own skin and living in alignment with our values. You can follow Skylar on Instagram at Skylar Liberty Rose or visit her website, www.skylarlibertyrose.com, to discover her coaching and community. Enjoy the episode and let us know what you think. Hello, Skylar. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Kim, and thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here today.
I'm really excited for my listeners to hear from you today, but selfishly, I really wanted you here because I know that you will fill our cup. And I know that this purpose that you have working with the women and your philosophy, a lot of times that comes from a story. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your story, what you've been through. How did you come to be helping women in this way?
Well, I've been working with women probably for the last decade in the kind of overall realm of women's empowerment. So for a bunch of years, I was working with women, helping them find their courage through creativity. And I'm 48 now, and I think it was around 44, when I just felt as though my work wasn't having the same impact, or that I didn't feel quite as connected to it as I had done previously. And at the same time, I was having a bit of a struggle with social media. And it was when influencer marketing had really burst onto the scene. And I just kept feeling as though I didn't have a place on social media anymore. It was all very kind of confusing. I was just questioning a lot of things. So I decided to take a step back, and I came off of social media entirely for 6 months. And I just wanted to get quiet. I had this really strong call to get quiet, get rid of all the outside noise, and just focus on what it was that I wanted to do and what it was I wanted to share with other people. And I would have these kind of meditation moments where I would kind of call in from the universe what the answer to that was. And I just kept getting this one response, or this one thing that would float up in my body that was tell the truth. And I was like, well, tell the truth, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, I do tell the truth. I'm all about authenticity. But that's what kept coming up. And I was like, okay, how can I honor this? And so what I did was I decided to, in 2020, start a documentary diary, which I put on Instagram. I started a new account called Woman in the World. And every day I would show up and post a picture of myself and a caption. And I would simply tell the truth about what was happening in my life. Um, and it didn't have a ton of followers. I think I had a few hundred people following me, but it felt really important that as a woman in her mid 40s, I was simply telling the truth about my life, about my experiences. I wasn't trying to filter anything. I wasn't trying to show up in a way that I thought the world expected me to show up in. And it felt so refreshing for me to do that, like for myself and other people who were connecting with me. And long story short, that actually ended up being featured by the National Women's History Museum. Of course, I had no idea at the beginning of the year. I was just talking about perimenopause and visibly aging. I had no idea that we were about to enter a pandemic and that was going to change all of our lives. But yeah, this little project of me telling the truth ended up in the National Women's History Museum. And after that year, I knew that I wanted to continue to work with women with regards to helping them embrace aging. So I pivoted in my business from helping women find their courage through creativity to helping them embrace aging. And yeah, that's what I've been doing ever since.
That is so powerful because in this society, you were talking about being on social media and things changing. I'm really curious your thoughts on women going into their 40s and 50s. You're experiencing it, you're sharing it, you're sharing the truth. What are women dealing with right now? And why is it such a struggle? Why is it such a struggle for us to hear the truth and to go with the truth?
Oh my goodness, what are women dealing with? All the things, literally all the things. I think, okay, so coming into our 40s and 50s, I think there's often a feeling of knowing ourselves more intimately. We've got some life experience under our belts. We know who we are at our core. We know what we enjoy, what we've had enough of. But it's also true that there's a lot of overwhelm. So many of us are taking care of families. We are holding down jobs. We're likely going through perimenopause, maybe menopause. And we're trying to deal with this continually shifting landscape, like in our bodies and outside. If for women who are parents, maybe they've got kids who are going through adolescence, there's a lot of change and it can feel overwhelming. And I think because of the way many of us have been raised, we are still so focused on what we are or how we are presenting ourselves outwardly. And there's struggle with that. There's struggle with how we feel about our appearance, about just what is required to juggle all these things that we are juggling. So it's this strange space of conflict where on one hand there's so much that we can feel good about and also so much that we can struggle with. And I think we have inherited ageist beliefs about what it is to get old. There's stigma, there's shame attached to aging, and that can be a struggle. We're not willing to meet ourselves in the truth of our experience because we think that it's a bad thing, that we're failing because we're aging. And this, of course, is not a failing on our part in any way, shape, or form. We are simply human beings in a society that has conditioned us to believe that about ourselves.
Wow, that's powerful. And we are inundated with so much information, and it creates a belief system in us women. It creates a belief system of what is acceptable, what we should be like. And then it's connected to those limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves. So what do you think are the limiting beliefs? What are women feeling about themselves when they're seeing all of this and they're feeling like they should be measuring up when and it's not just image, like you said, it's not just the outer body, it's us living up to handling all the things. But we see a lot of this comes down on us in our body, in our skin, in our hair, and in image, just because that's what we see in society. So what do you feel are some of those beliefs that women are having about themselves and what they should be doing?
I think you're right. There's absolutely a belief that we should be looking a certain way, and so I think one of the most common things that comes up with the women that I work with the women that I speak with, is that we are somehow already too old, that it's already too late to do certain things, whether that's wear a certain outfit, have our hair a certain way. I mean, we are bombarded with articles that tell us, like headlines are like, hairstyles to avoid over 40, makeup to avoid over 45. So it's really difficult to move through this world and not be impacted by those kinds of messages to any degree. So a lot of this is not necessarily even really overt stuff, but sometimes subliminal messages that we are absorbing. And we're making it about our appearance, but that also then impacts things that we might want to do, adventures that we might want to go on. I mean, I hear it so often, oh, I'd like to try that, but I'm probably too old at this point. I met somebody last week who is working as an auctioneer for charity. She does charity fundraising. She's doing some incredible work, and she's larger than life when she's there on the stage. She has this incredible energy. And she said, oh, I just had a moment the other week where I was like, how many more years can I do this for? And I think she's in her mid-40s. And it's heartbreaking to me. It's horrible to imagine that there are so many women out there who are so capable, so energetic, so much life still to give. And yet, on some level, there's that voice in their heads where they're kind of saying to themselves, gosh, yeah, but this is going to end soon, isn't it? Because I don't get to continue being this vibrant, this energetic, this full of life. And I mean, of course, the answer is yes, you do. You absolutely do. But it is a challenge to disentangle ourselves completely from these limiting beliefs, unless we start to create awareness around why we feel this way, and pay attention to what messaging we're actually soaking up.
I really like how you talked about even how we should wear our hair, what we should wear, and taking adventures and starting something new, or thinking not just how long can we do it, but maybe we want to try something new. And I laugh about that because I started my business, my first business at age 50, starting my first podcast at age 56. And those were the exact thoughts that went through my head. Who am I to start this? I'm in midlife now. But I want to talk to you about something too that I think is really funny. My mom and I laugh about this. When I was growing up, my hair was always cut, and that was a generational thing. Her parents cut her hair or told her that it was acceptable to have this certain haircut. And then as we got older, I would hear things like, oh, you shouldn't have long hair when you're over 40 or over 50. And again, it was a generational thing. So in addition to society, we have grown up, society's probably also influenced the generations. We have grown up with things, even in our own families, that create these beliefs around what is acceptable and not. I love that. Thank you. And I love that you brought up taking the adventures, because I think that so many people don't do the things that they could do that would bring them so much joy and so much passion. And sometimes we have to not be good at something new at first, no matter what age it is. Do you think that part of that too is, as we get older, we're just so aware of what people, society, what others think of us?
Yeah, I mean, I think as women, we've grown up being aware. And so we've always had this idea that our appearance is of the utmost importance. And sometimes, well, often that's about our personal appearance, but also in the way of keeping up appearances. So it matters what jobs we have, where we live, what cars we drive, all of those kind of material things, or um, the things that we attach value to. But definitely, yes, our appearance. And of course, as we age, our appearance changes. And we are told all the time that aging is a privilege, but we are shown that aging is a crime because we see we see in magazines, I mean, probably more tabloidy stuff, but it kind of filters its way into other spaces. We see that women who are visibly aging are often attacked for doing so or publicly criticized for doing so. And we are not, none of us are in isolation from the world that we're in. So when we see that, there's a certain amount of fear that we ingest from that, thinking, oh my goodness, well, if Madonna is getting slated for her appearance, if Courtney Cox is being told, oh, now, she did all right for a few years, but now she's actually starting to look too old. There's a part of us that's like, oh God, I don't want anyone to say anything about me. And so we do shrink ourselves accordingly. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because we are more capable than we've ever been at this stage of our lives. And I think that's true for every stage of our lives, to be fair. But the idea that we should miss out on life and more life just because we have this fear that we will be ridiculed or judged for what we do or how we look doing it is something I dedicate my work to trying to challenge that idea and to shift us into a space where we're no longer thinking in such limiting ways, because it really is limiting.
And I agree, it's heartbreaking. You used a really good word that I want to highlight: shrinking ourselves. And that goes across the board, shrinking ourselves as far as taking up too much space, using our voice, changing our bodies. That is a very good word to use in all areas of how women sometimes feel. They don't even know that they're feeling it. It's actually a reaction that is such a habit because of just growing up with those feelings. And I appreciate that. That is a really good word to highlight. What do you think of women now, speaking of the shrinking and speaking of wanting to be certain things, but maybe not stepping out and doing it? Do you feel like women in their 40s, 50s, even going into their 60s, are they feeling heard? Are they feeling seen, especially if they are talking about the aging process?
I love this question. And I think it's a complex thing to answer because I think yes and no. I think women, in some ways, we're seeing more and more women in midlife and older women in general receive more visibility. And we're certainly using social media in ways that we never have before. So we have this amazing platform now with social media where we're able to share the things that we want to say. And so that side of it is really encouraging. We are the first generation of women who are our age that are using technology in this way. So it's opened up a whole new way of communication that we haven't really had before. So I think it's exciting. I think we're community building in a way that we haven't been able to previously. But as far as wider visibility, if you like, in the mainstream is concerned, I'd say we're making headway, but sometimes it feels as though it's more of the same stereotypes. So just an example of something recently, because I was commenting on a post on it this morning, in fact, on Instagram. But Martha Stewart, as you may know, is getting a lot of press right now for being on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 81. which is fantastic. Good for her. I think that's really, really incredible. And it's still all about how young she looks and how great her body is. We're still glorifying this stereotype that we've always been told to aspire to. So, in terms of really moving the needle, and I think for the majority of women to feel as though their lives and their experiences are truly being represented, that they're truly being seen, feeling seen, being heard, I think we have more work to do. I do.
That's really funny that you brought that up, because that was actually a question I was going to ask you, because what we hear a lot is, oh, she's aging well. She looks good for her age. What do you feel about those phrases when
Oh,
someone
Kim.
is feeling good, but no, they're good for their age?
Right. I struggle with these phrases, and I've been open about this before on social media. I'm like, what does aging well even mean? I really feel like it's a phrase that carries a certain air of judgment, and we often see it with aging gracefully. It kind of suggests that there's a bad way to age or a wrong way to age. So if you're aging well, that you're doing it right. But we typically see this, and we've seen it on the post for Martha Stewart. Oh, isn't she aging well? So it's really focusing on how we look. It's not really about whether we're living in alignment with our values, because nobody's using it in that context. So, or rarely they're using it in that context. So for me, aging well is much more about living with intention, living with integrity. Are we leading with love? Are we living with joy? Those are the kinds of questions that I like to ask myself. And saying she looks good for her age, it's ageist. I mean, it's simply ageist. We don't have to say for her age at all. We don't say to a teenager that they look good for their age. So why do we have to say it to older women? I think a lot of the time people think that they're giving this kind of feedback or these comments, that they mean them from a good space. They are intended to be a compliment. And this is what we've heard other women say about other women. So we're kind of just reinforcing what we think is a good thing to say, but it's really not. It's a backhanded compliment. And again, it's all about our appearance.
That is so true. And I think, again, it's because the person giving the compliment is living in the same world of ageism and
Exactly.
has been programmed. A lot of us have been programmed this way. And with that programming, the marketing has been preying on that fear and that programming for so long. And I'm curious about that. Do you feel that women are being sold on the anti-aging, being sold on the reversing aging, being sold on looking 20 years younger than they are?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's this idea that our aging experience will somehow be better if we look younger. And it's so problematic. It's really problematic because this culture of anti-aging is so pervasive. And let's be honest, it's $1 billion industry. I think within the beauty industry alone, anti-aging products are like right up there with the highest profits that they generate, the revenue they generate for the beauty industry. And so we're really honing in on women's insecurities, and we're highlighting them, and we are presenting them as problems that need to be fixed, all the while sending this message that once they're fixed, and they never will be, because our bodies, of course, will continue to change, will continue to age. But once they're fixed, we are more worthy, and we will have this amazing life that we can't have until we look a certain way. And the culture of anti-aging and diet culture are not poles apart at all. So it's about, again, our appearance, it's about our skin, and often that goes hand in hand with our weight. So we tend to hear this all under the guise of wellness. So if we look a certain way, if we manage to hit that target weight on the scales, then we've achieved something. We are more desirable, and therefore we'll be more happy. And I think a lot of women strive so hard to attain these unattainable goals, and then get to that space and then realize they don't actually feel any more content than they did prior, because they're not actually addressing what they really need to address. They're not acting with compassion. They're not doing the work to accept and embrace themselves as they are, but they're constantly being led by all of these external influences that are not really about helping us to feel rooted, to feel grounded, but much more about keeping us in this constant state of dissatisfaction so that we'll keep spending money.
That is extremely powerful, because that is marketing. And you mentioned diet culture, because diet culture is the same. And when we talk about shrinking, again, that's part of diet culture. And the anti-aging and diet world, they are multi-billion-dollar industries. And the marketing does seem to be off of exactly what you said. You will be happy when you look like this, when you have achieved this body, when you have erased wrinkles that are coming on naturally. And we are sold a bill of goods that is to make us happier. So let's step back into that for just a moment. What are some of the things internally, if we're looking at beauty, maybe from the inside out and true happiness, what are some of the things that women could focus on to get started, to be in that grounded present state with themselves? Because it's hard. It's hard to tune out the world. It's hard to tune out social media. It's hard to tune out the past. It's hard to tune out childhood and the things that you were told in labels.
Yes.
But maybe you can give us a couple ideas of some places that would bring a little more joy from inside.
Well, I think, first of all, yes to everything you said. I mean, these are very valid things. We don't just arrive in the world as adults who are fully aware that there are systems in place that are set up to, not really invest in our truest, most optimum healthy selves. So I think it's really important. Compassion is super important. If sometimes we can know things intellectually, often we can know things intellectually, but in terms of actually being able to embody that knowledge and really absorb it emotionally as well, that can take work. And I think it can not only take work, but it takes ongoing work, because as you said, we've all been conditioned to some degree through marketing, through family conversations, anything that we're exposed to in the world, to have a certain belief system. So disentangling ourselves from that, it's not easy. It's not particularly easy. Right now, I have makeup on. I am dressed a certain way. I am conscious to some degree, at least, of my appearance. Intellectually, I know that my self-worth is not anything to do with my appearance, but I'm a woman in the world who has grown up with all of this. So I extend a lot of grace and compassion to myself. So that's compassion is a big one for me. Something else that I really make sure to do is to surround myself with people who are inspiring me in ways that I want to be inspired. So I like to do this online and offline. Boundaries are really important. And I think that's one of the things that the women that I work with, it comes up time and time again, boundaries. We need to do this work, to be on this journey, to be on this path of feeling more contentment, more joy, just more alive. We really need to just be conscious of who we're allowing into our energetic space. And that, again, it's online and offline. If you are constantly following people who are, whether it's brands or individuals, who are telling you that you're not good enough as you are, and they're not inspiring you to do anything beyond pay their money for their product, then take a look at that. Get curious about why you're following these people and what they're really adding in terms of value to your life. And again, I know it's not always easy when we have complex kind of friendships or family relations, but we do have a say in where our energy goes and who we allow into our spaces. So if you find that you're around a certain set of people, and when you come away from them, you're actually feeling worse about yourself than you were before, that's something else to get curious about. How can you limit that time, or how can you communicate that to them, perhaps? So yeah, I think there are ways that we can absolutely start to disentangle ourselves from the most harmful parts of this conditioning. And the good news is, once you kind of have that eye-opening moment and you start to see that none of these systems of oppression operate in isolation, it's really amazing, because you can't then go back to how you were. And so you automatically start to feel better about yourself, because you recognize, wait a minute, these systems are all set up to oppress, and I don't have to actually judge myself or value myself in the ways that they're telling me to. And it's a nice awakening. It's a beautiful thing, I think, about aging, and just recognizing things for what they are. And I think it's as much, for me, midlife is as much about a time of unlearning as it is learning. I'm really enjoying that aspect of it, just being like, all those things that I measured myself against for all these years, I don't have to do that anymore. And so it feels really liberating.
What a release. And you can't
Yeah.
unknow what you know.
Yeah.
It's so nice to have that. I love that you talk about boundaries, because boundaries
Yes.
span all across our lives, whether it's with people, social media, even our thoughts. And it sounds like in this process, when you're helping women, you're helping them practice over and over again, rewiring and changing those thoughts. Because once we know it, like you said, intellectually and rationally, we know what's going on. But to actually follow through because of the emotional component, it's really challenging, because we get caught back up in that worth and feeling
Yeah.
good enough. So I really appreciate that you brought that up. People pleasing is also something that a lot of us women have been conditioned to do. But people pleasing goes beyond just doing something nice for someone. It goes beyond that, to the point where we are feeling like we have to be pleasing even to the eye.
Exactly.
That's challenging. Thank you. I know that you are one of the most non-judgmental women I have ever met, but I am curious about your thoughts. I really believe that. I'm very curious about your thoughts for the women who do still feel caught up in, there's so many things out there right now. And me as a health coach, I'm even a little challenged with people doing what they call the fat shot, things like Ozempic, and I'm not talking necessarily for health reasons, by the way, or injectables, Botox and fillers, dyeing hair as it's turning gray, maybe even hormone therapy. What are your thoughts on women choosing that path, even knowing what they may know,
I'm all
or
about
not knowing?
choice. Yeah, exactly. I'm very pro-choice, and I think that I totally believe it's a woman's right to choose what she does with her body. And that's with regards to what we put on our skin, what we put in our bodies, how we dress, what we do with our hair. These are our choices to make. So I always try to challenge the culture and not criticize the individual. I do invite women to get curious about why they make the choices that they make. And so, what's the story beneath the story is something that I use a lot in coaching, because there's always a story beneath the story. And it's really the culture that reinforces the idea that we're not worthy as we already are when it comes to beauty treatments, and that aging is an issue that needs to be addressed, that needs to be fixed. And then, that's really why a lot of women do opt for cosmetic procedures, because they've really absorbed this belief that being seen in a natural state of going through the aging process is somehow horrifying. And again, we're told aging is a privilege, but we're shown that it is a crime. So it's not our fault that we feel this way, first of all. And that's why I don't want to go after individuals. I don't want women who are already being judged and measured in so many ways to feel as though now this is something else they're getting wrong. But yeah, like, hormone therapy is, I feel like that's, I was going to say it's slightly separate, but it's funny that that's come up, because I saw a post, I think it was yesterday, where it was a discussion. It was really interesting. It was on Instagram. I can't remember whose page it was on, but somebody had posted about feeling as though they were failing by starting to take hormones. And it kind of launched this really interesting conversation, and kind of goes to show that there's really no area where women feel as though we're not failing or that we're being judged in some kind of way. So, we're judged if we look like we're aging, but we're judged if we use filters. We're judged if we opt for Botox, but we're judged we have visible wrinkles. And then we're judged if we have hormone therapy. Like it's kind of like, oh my goodness, where's our safe space? But hormone therapy, I mean, that's something that I'm considering right now. I'm having a really rough time in perimenopause, possibly menopause at this point, with so many things. And I'm very open about sharing about them. I have had low libido, vaginal dryness, hot flashes, and my anxiety has been something that is really, really been challenging for me. I refuse to go through all of this and not seek solutions for myself. So I'm not going to be judged by anyone for that. And I'm not going to judge myself for that. This isn't me failing at getting perimenopause or menopause right. It's me as a human being who has a life to lead and who wants quality of life to offer myself as much support as possible. So no, I thank you for what you said about me not being judgmental. So I really try to not do that to other women. And of course, I'm human. I'm sure I do it sometimes. But I think each woman has to make a choice about what is best for them. And everyone's story is different. There's so many variables, and each of us is in different bodies. We each have different capacity, different responsibilities. We have a lot of similarities, but so much of what we experience is very individual to us. And so it makes sense that the choices that we make will be individual to us as well. So I absolutely encourage women to, yes, get curious about why they're making the choices they're making, but also to do what is right for them, and to, wherever possible, let go of the idea that anybody else needs to approve their choices before they make them.
That's great. I'm really glad that you just shared your story with the perimenopause, because as a holistic nutritionist, I wanted to do everything holistically. I wanted to live that. I wanted to be that. And I went through the exact same things. I had the anxious thoughts, just all of the symptoms, everything that I felt was making me feel not like me. So I could list all of the individual symptoms, but the bottom line was I was not me. It was really hard. And I'm sure you feel the same way. It's really hard to fulfill your purpose and help other people when you're not even feeling yourself. And
Yeah.
I felt in my community, ironically, that I would be judged. And the bottom line is I had to get grounded, get centered, be still, and know that I had to make a choice that was my choice. And every person we come in contact with We have to let them make that choice. But again, the story behind the story was this identity of being holistic. So we all have an identity that we have clung on to. So thank you for sharing that, because I think the women who are listening, we want them to feel safe in whatever space they're in their choices. And unfortunately, the only time we can feel safe many times is with ourselves. We can't rely on other people to help us feel that safety. We have to do it for ourselves. I am curious, in your words, even though you've really expressed this, but in your words, what do you wish for women in this age range to feel right now?
Oh, more than anything, and this really sums up what we've been speaking about, I want them to feel liberated. I want them to feel as though they get to choose, whether they had that experience before in their lives or not. Now is the time where they get to choose. So I want them to feel that sense of liberation and that sense of power that comes with it. I want them to make choices that truly support and nourish them. And this is something that comes up a lot with my membership club, because one of the focuses is on joy. And it's something that we overlook so much. It's like joy is something that is, I'll get around to that once I've taken care of, excuse me, all of these things. No, weave joy into your life now. It is so important, and it doesn't have to be another responsibility. It doesn't have to be something else that you have to add to your to-do list. I really like women to simplify their lives as much as possible, because there's enough overwhelm, there's enough busyness, and there's enough struggle in the world. So joy in the small, ordinary moments. Like, don't overlook that, because it really matters. So to summarize, I would say I want women to feel liberated. I want them to feel powerful, and I want them to feel joyful.
That's wonderful. And the joy is really interesting too, because joy is just something you feel. And I think sometimes we're not open to it because we have so many things going on in the day. The joy is always there. The little things are always there, but we have to almost take the blindfold off to the fact that that's there, because we have so many external forces coming in.
Well, Kim, I actually have an alert on my phone that goes off at 5 o'clock every day, 5 p.m. Nothing goes off at 5 a.m., I can assure you. And it literally says, it's on my phone, and it says, what brought me joy today? And so it gives me pause in that moment to reflect on what simple things brought me joy that day. And I don't think this has ever happened, honestly, but if I get to 5 o'clock and my alert goes off and I haven't had anything that's brought me joy that day, then it's not too late in the day for me to find something joyful to experience and to notice. So I recommend that if someone's like, oh, I overlook all the ordinary moments where there might be joy, or I'm not connecting with my joy, a little alert on your phone or a post-it note or something that will just prompt you to pay attention, I think is really useful.
That's really a wonderful idea, because we do get really busy. And I find even with gratitude and joy, when we do make a point of doing it every day, our brain actually rewires and starts to look for it. And you start to know things that you can put on your list before you even get to the time that you get to put them on the list.
Yeah.
I see you unapologetically being you. I see you stepping out and telling your truth. How can women start to be able to have that feeling where they can just be unapologetic about it, be authentic? Do you have any thoughts on just even a tip to get them moving in the right direction?
Well, it's come up already, but something I really, really believe in is how important it is with regards to who we surround ourselves with, online and offline. If you're keeping company with women who are constantly criticizing themselves, or even worse, criticizing you, that's going to have an impact. If you are following women who are, I mean, this is about appearance, but if you're following women who are all using filters, or they're all a particular body shape or size or color, you're going to have a very narrow ideal of what is considered worthy. So I think really paying attention to who you're allowing into your energetic space is still very much relevant in terms of how we live and not just in terms of how we look. So we need role models. We need to see women who are already out there doing their thing. So we start to broaden our idea of what an aging experience or even a human experience can be like. And so I always, if somebody has a specific idea of the way that they would like to age, I always say, well, seek out evidence of somebody who's already doing that. And I promise you there's evidence out there. And see what they're doing. Like, allow that energy to inspire you, to motivate you. And then you become that person that is doing the same for other people. But yeah, this very narrow idea, if you're just watching certain TV shows or news channels even, and you're having this idea of what's worthy and who is worthy reinforced by repetition over and over again, no wonder you're going to struggle. So just broadening your horizons, broadening who you interact with can be really, really stimulating and inspiring.
That's very powerful. Broadening and opening up your world is really powerful. It also leads me to think about when we judge other people, we actually are judging ourselves. So breaking free of the ideas that we already have that we're putting on other women, when we can break free from that, it's easier to break free in ourselves also. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, it's true. Just as you were saying that, I'm thinking about, I mean, I do try not to judge people, and I'm a human being, and it's something that most of us do. I try to interrupt that thought or just catch the thought when I notice that it happens. And again, get curious about it. Curiosity is something I've mentioned a couple of times because I think it's a really gentle way for us to do a little bit of self-inquiry without feeling as though we're putting ourselves under a microscope, and then allowing that negative self-talk to come in about, like, oh, why am I doing this? But you're right, it's usually when we're judging other people, there's usually something within ourselves that it's bringing up. So yeah, I think just again being curious about why we're having a thought that we're having can be a really, really nice way of dismantling some of the beliefs that we have and some of the values that we have. And yeah, just really, again, I've mentioned it, but the unlearning, like sometimes I actually rejoice in the fact that there's so much I don't know. So much I don't know. I think when I was younger, I had this idea, as probably many of us do, that we get to a certain point and we're there, we've arrived, we know it all. And now at 48, I'm like, oh no, it doesn't work like that at all. And I expect the rest of my life to be this journey of learning and unlearning and reevaluating what I thought I know, what I thought I knew. And at 58, and if I'm lucky enough, 68, 78 and beyond, that will likely change as well. So yeah, it's just an evolving journey, and I'm just grateful to be on it.
What a beautiful journey of learning. I love that. Learning and unlearning.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think you've given us so many beautiful tips and things for us to think about today. But I do ask all my guests at the end of the show, I believe, like you, that we really need to nourish our entire lives. It's not just about the body and the food and the outer appearance. Do you have anything else that you would like to share as a tip for someone to get started on nourishing their life?
I would say the biggest thing is don't do it alone. I think so many of us feel as though we've got to move through this stage of our lives, just like figuring it all out because we're of a certain age now, and we should know what to do and how to get to where we want to be. And it's just not true. The ways that I've been able to help myself have almost always been in the support of community. So I'd say find somebody who can act as a mentor or a coach if you want to do one-on-one work. But I really do believe in the power of community. So give yourself an opportunity to be uplifted, to be inspired, and to witness and be witnessed by other women. I think it's a game changer. And yeah, like the idea that we should struggle through midlife or the aging process in isolation is not helpful to any of us. So I'd say don't do it alone, get a supportive community. And again, stay open, stay curious. When we think we already know all the answers, we are closing ourselves off to so much life, and allowing ourselves to just reconsider, reevaluate what we've learned so far and what we might still learn on the journey to come. It just opens up possibility and potential, and it feels more energizing. So yeah, being in community, being open, being curious, and compassionate towards ourselves. Nobody ever has benefited from punishing themselves, from being mean to themselves. So I think the more kindness and grace we can extend to ourselves, the better.
I love those 3 C's: curiosity, compassion, and connection. That is a great way to close. I love it. Skylar, you are such a gift to all of us women. And like I said, this was a little selfish, not just for my listeners, because I always learn from you. How can people find you?
Well, Instagram is where I am on social media. So that's my name, Skylar Liberty Rose. And of course, my website, which is also my name, skylarlibertyrose.com. So they're the 2 main places. Oh, I also have a Substack now. But that's all listed on my website. So, and my Instagram. So yeah, they're the 2 main places.
That's great. I also encourage everyone to sign up for your newsletter because I enjoy getting that letter. It is filled with so much inspiration and encouragement. So thank you. I appreciate that. And all of these will be listed in the show notes for you listeners. You can just click on the link. And thank you again, Skylar. I appreciate you being here.
Kim, it has just been so lovely to speak to you. I really enjoyed this. So thank you so much for the invitation and for holding such lovely space here.
Thank you. And for everyone else, please remember to nourish your entire lives and give yourself grace today. I really appreciate you being here. If you resonated with this podcast, it would mean a lot to me if you'd be willing to follow or subscribe to the Emotional Eats podcast. Then you'll never miss an episode. Just go to the Emotional Eats show page on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner and click on it. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give me a 5-star rating and review, I would be so grateful. If you'd like to take a screenshot and share it on Instagram, just tag me at Kim Hines Health. I would love to hear your thoughts and let me know how I can support you. You can always DM me on Instagram, again, at Kim Hines Health. And just remember to nourish your life and give yourself grace today.